The early days, oh, a better nation, fair and free, Scotland.
Hello, this is Scottish Independence Podcast episode number 177. This episode will take a run around a few of the things that have been going on at the moment. I'll keep Brexit to a minimum, as whatever the story is right now at the time of recording, it will be completely different after 15 minutes. However, I said I would keep it to a minimum. I'm not keeping it entirely out of it. Here's a little something that the British government has been paying to have broadcast on an advertising platform for podcasts outside of the UK. This particular example comes from Italy, but it's basically the same kind of thing all around the European Union. Have a listen, see if you notice anything.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October and find out how you can carry on living and working here. For example, you will need to apply for residency, check your access to healthcare, exchange your UK driving licence, and go online to check that your passport is valid. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October by reading the Living In Guide at govt.uk/living in Italy.
Now you could take that as sensible forward planning, or you might have noticed the 31st of October tends to chime with Boris Johnson's "come what may" sort of line. Suffice to say, apparently millions have been poured into this campaign, and these adverts are appearing in lots and lots of places. Next up, not Scottish Labour, but a Scottish MP for an English seat, Jim Fitzpatrick. He actually voted with Boris Johnson.
Have you managed to read it? Genuine
No.
question. No. Have you tried?
No.
You haven't tried to read any of this?
Not yet, no.
Or the explanatory notes?
No.
Or the impact assessment?
No.
The debate starts at lunchtime, though.
Yeah, I'll be there at 12:30.
Right, but you already know you're voting for it.
In principle, because as Norman Smith explained to your viewers right at the beginning, this is a vote in principle. The second reading vote at 7 o'clock tonight is basically to say, let's get discussing this bill. So the debate on the clauses doesn't start until about 7:30 and goes all the way through tomorrow, and we won't see the amendments until later today, and that will be
they've been
another
published
volume which will
already.
be coming through.
Yeah.
So the vote in principle at 7 o'clock tonight will be saying, do we want to go for this or not? And this may very well be the first time a Brexit vote passes the House of Commons to go on to the programme motion, which will be detailing the timetabling of a discussion over the next 3 days.
Do you think it's acceptable to vote for something in principle when you've not read it, Mr. Fitzpatrick?
I will have read it by 7 o'clock tonight, I hope. I will be studying it this afternoon.
hope?
I will have it.
Is this not what people pay you to do?
Yeah, people pay me to make decisions, Victoria. And I have been through this.
In order to make an informed decision, don't you have to read it?
We have been discussing this in detail for the last 11 and a half months.
But there are some important changes, as you well know.
Yes, indeed. And I will look at them. And I will make a decision on the basis of judgment, which in my view is that we need to move forward on Brexit because we've had this for 3.5 years from the public. We've been debating the detail for 11 and a half months. And at some point we have to make a decision. I think today is decision time.
OK. And will you vote for the super quick timetable that Boris Johnson wants as well?
Yes, again, as Norman Smith explained to your viewers at the start, this is a threshold, this is a framework agreement. The detailed negotiations will be taking place during the implementation period, which will last at least until the end of next year or even further forward. And those discussions will be taking place in the Commons and MPs will have a chance to vote on them. And there is a solid majority in the House of Commons against a no-deal Brexit, and that has manifested itself every time it's been tested over the past 6 months.
Well, I don't know if you found that particularly convincing, but we'll move on. Next up is someone from Ireland who's been living in Scotland, voted no in the last independence referendum and would vote yes next time. Have a listen to his reasons.
I think some of the reasons I voted to remain were about identity as much as anything else. And it sounds to me like that's true of you as well.
Yes, but even for me, another dimension to it I would point towards is the way that our elected representatives are treated and regarded in the Westminster Parliament. So, obviously with the process that's gone on the past few months, there's a lot of attention, a lot more attention and scrutiny being paid to the proceedings in Westminster chambers. But any debate I've watched, what happens is every time an SNP MP gets to their feet, the Tory politicians are already laughing, sneering, joking at those people. And, they stand, regardless of what they're about to say, they're standing to speak for me. And all I see is the government in power right now laughing and joking and sneering at the people who have been elected to represent where I live.
And do you, there's no indication of this from the EU, but do you, when you look at the special arrangements around Northern Ireland, think, we'll have that, thanks, in Scotland?
Well, no, I'm Irish. I live here a number of years. But I understand and respect the fact that they are being put in place to protect the truce, the ceasefire in the north of Ireland, which is absolutely a positive thing, and it needs to happen. Yeah. But what I'm saying, if you look at it from the UK perspective and the way the negotiations have unfolded, Scotland's voice has been excluded. Absolutely, there's just we've been ignored up here.
And has it changed how you would vote in a general election as much as a referendum?
Yes, I also have. Now, Deirdre Brock has my vote next time, for sure.
Well, that's interesting. So you've gone from no to independence to yes to independence, and from Labour voting in Scotland to SNP voting in Scotland in a general election.
And while we're on the subject of Northern Ireland, someone posted this recently about hardcore unionists. For the Scottish Tories, maybe this little bit of narrative could be interesting.
But there's also something sad here. The people wave their flags and bang their drums, but deep down they fear that time is running out. They fear the day when Catholics become a majority in Northern Ireland and Protestants cease to be masters in their own house. They fear the day the British government decides enough is enough and pulls out. And what happens to a nationalism cut off from the mainland? It ceases to be a claim that must be honoured. It becomes a caricature that can be disowned. That's the tragedy of loyalism. If they are abandoned, it won't be because they lacked loyalty, but because they were too loyal. Loyal to a past the British have left behind. The final destination for the march is a large field outside Belfast. It's meant to symbolize the battlefield at the Boyne, and that's exactly what it looks like, a battlefield after a battle.
So-called siege mentality. But our message today...
And in one corner of the field, a preacher drones on, preaching the same old sermon to the converted.
Let them now stand back and see the great emergence of British and Protestant Ulster out of the siege. By the grace of God, the great escape is now underway. That is the message.
Now, we all know that Scotland and Northern Ireland are not a direct comparison. However, I think in the light of some recent polls that have suggested a majority of voters in England would be happy to see the back of Scotland if it secured Brexit, I think that little clip's quite interesting. Next up, just a few clips of speeches from the massive independence march in Edinburgh recently. Obviously, it's the kind of tub-thumping speeches you get there, but here's a few selected quotes from those. We'll just go straight through them. First, it's Hardeep Singh Kohli, then Tommy Shepherd MP, then Joanna Cherry, and then a bit of Chris McElhenney.
Also, for those that doubt, you're in the city of the Enlightenment, you're in the Athens of the North. You're in the country that invented the Industrial Revolution, the steam hammer, the train, the television, the telephone, penicillin, Dolly the sheep, tar macadam, waterproof jackets, sectarianism. Scotland invented everything. And I'll tell you something I've just seen, and I would not have believed this had I not seen it with my own brown eyes. This movement, this independence movement, this civic nationalist movement has brought together folk that would never have shared a space together. In all my life, being a boy from Glasgow, I've never seen the Celtic and the Rangers symbols on the same banner. Celtic supporters, Rangers supporters, united for Scottish independence. If they can do it, fuck it, we can do it! Sorry about that. It's got a wee bit emotional there when I thought we might be independent. And if you meet any brown Scots that are again independence, just remind them, it wasn't so bad for India, was it?
Good afternoon, folks. It is a joy and a privilege to be able to welcome you here to the Meadows in the heart of our capital city. And it is my privilege to represent this area. Gone are the days when Edinburgh was the preserve of the Tory ruling classes. This is now an SNP-controlled city, and one which we intend to remain proud of. I congratulate you all for what has been the biggest march that we have had since those dark days of September the 19th, 2014. It has been a long 5 years, my friends, but I tell you, we are closer now to achieving the independence for our country than we have ever been. And I want to start with Brexit, which Peter mentioned. The people of this constituency, 74% of them voted against Brexit. And that was after most teenage voters and citizens of this city who were born in other European countries were taken off the register and not allowed to vote in the referendum. But 3/4 of the remainder voted to stay in the European Union. Because the people of this city and the people of this country want Scotland to be a proud, independent European country, working with our neighbours in order to make things better at home and abroad. And that is why I oppose Brexit. We did not vote for it, and we will not be dragged out of the European Union against our will. Brexit is a policy and a strategy devised by rich and powerful people who object to the rules of the European Union impinging on their ability to get even richer and more powerful. That is what is behind it. Brexit is part of a global right-wing campaign to try and roll back the gains that working people have made in this planet over several generations. That is why I am against it. I tell you this, we go back down to Westminster next week, and we will be discussing again in the run-up to Halloween whether there's going to be a deal or a no deal. I don't want a Brexit deal. I want no Brexit. And that is what I will be fighting for at every stage of the way. And once, as I am confident we will have done, once by Halloween, we get the Brexit deadline extended and prevent Boris Johnson getting what he wants and his do-or-die policy. Once that has happened, then I want a general election. Because I want to get rid of Boris Johnson and the most right-wing Conservative government that has existed in my lifetime. And I tell you this, my friends, this is a government without legitimacy. It is a government that has got no right to govern. It has no mandate, and they should go and face the people in a general election. And when it comes to that election here in Scotland, be under no mistake that this election gives us an opportunity to say not just that we do not like Brexit, not just that we do not like the Tories, but that we never, ever again want to be put in a position where we are dragged into that against our will. This coming election gives us the opportunity to demand the right to have an alternative future, an independent future where we take to ourselves the normal powers that people enjoy in many democratic countries throughout the world. And in doing that,